Oh, I didn't see you come in. Welcome, day 78. Welcome to day 78 of the 100 Days of Narration Challenge. My name is Edwin Tiong, and this week is going to be themed Harry Potter week. So, if you guessed what the first book I read this week was, I think I gave way too many clues, and it's not that hard anyway. Got quite a few guesses here, quite a few guesses there. But yeah, so Harry Potter week. So, I mean, I just thought to myself, hey, 7 days in the themed week, 7 Harry Potter books. Why not? I mean, I've read 2 of the books before. In fact, I'm rereading them right now, and but I thought, why not? Why not go ahead and reread them again? And maybe things will be different this time. Maybe this time I'll be able to pronounce Hermione's name right. Hermione. Yeah, let's try that. That sounds good. Is it right? I don't know. I've never watched the films. No, wait, that's a lie. I have watched 1 or 2 of the films. I just don't recall a lot about them. Maybe I should rectify that. Go and watch the films again. After rereading the books all the way through again, which would be fun. Anyway, so today's book is going to be Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, which would be the second book of the Harry Potter series, which makes sense because because it's day 2 of the Harry Potter week. So, what is it all about? Do I really need to explain? Why don't I just read the blurb, and we'll go from there. Harry Potter is a wizard. He is in his 2nd year at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Little does he know that this year will be just as eventful as the last. That's a lot of years when I think about... Ooh, sorry, hit the microphone. 7 years in school. Is that a lot of years? Do you think that's a lot of years? I don't know. Maybe it's not. Then again, maybe they start from... what do you guys call it? Over here, we call it preparatory school. Preparatory school. But I guess over in America, it would be like, there's high school. What's the level just below high school? Grade school? Elementary school? Kindergarten? Probably not kindergarten. Oh, whatever. Anyway, let's flip through and find somewhere I can read. I hope... I'll start in the... I'll do a chapter, I think. I mean, I won't do a whole chapter, but I'll start from a chapter. Yeah. Okay, this looks good. Flipped randomly and got to chapter 7. Chapter 7, Mudbloods and Murmurs. All right, we'll go from here. Harry spent a lot of time over the next few days, dodging out of sight whenever he saw Gilderoy Lockhart coming down a corridor. Harder to avoid was Colin Creevey, who seemed to have memorized Harry's timetable. Nothing seemed to give Colin a bigger thrill than to say, "All right, Harry," 6 or 7 times a day and hear, "Hello, Colin," back. However exasperated Harry sounded when he said it. Hedwig was still angry with Harry about the disastrous car journey, and Ron's wand was still malfunctioning, surpassing itself on Friday morning by shooting out of Ron's hands in charms and hitting tiny old Professor Flitwick squarely between the eyes, creating a large, throbbing green boil where it had struck. So, with one thing and another, Harry was quite glad to reach the weekend. He, Ron, and, oh God, Hermione. I will know how to say that name. Hermione. We're planning to visit Hagrid on Saturday morning. Harry, however, was shaken awake several hours earlier than he would have liked by Oliver Wood, captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. "What's the matter?" said Harry groggily. Quidditch Patridge? Wow. How did I get Patridge from Rakdos? Oh, God. Oh, I really should not be doing these readings so late at night. I'm doing these readings after work, and I think I'm just not able to concentrate on the words on the paper. It's just, I'm tired and I want to go to sleep. But if I wake up in the morning to do this, I'll be sleepy, and it'll be the same thing. Madness. Quidditch practice, said Wood. Come on. Harry squinted at the window. There was a thin mist hanging across the pink and gold sky. Now he was awake. He couldn't understand how he could have slept through the racket and the birds were... He couldn't understand how he could have slept through the racket the birds were making. Oliver, Harry croaked, it's the crack of dawn. Exactly, said Wood. He was a tall and burly sixth year, and at the moment his eyes were gleaming with a mad enthusiasm. It's part of our new training program. Come on, grab your broom and let's go, said Wood heartily. None of the other teams have started training yet. We're going to be the first off the mark this year. Yawning and shivering slightly, Harry climbed out of bed and tried to find his Quidditch robes. Good man, said Wood. Meet you on the pitch in 15 minutes. When he'd found his Scarlet Team robes and pulled on his cloak for warmth, Harry Harry scribbled a note to Ron explaining where he'd gone and went down the spiral staircase to the common room, his Nimbus 2000 on his shoulder. He had just reached the portrait hole when there was a clatter behind him, and Colin Creevey came dashing down the spiral staircase, his camera swinging madly around his neck and something clutched in his hand. I heard someone saying your name on the stairs, Harry. Look what I've got here. I've had it developed. I wanted to show you. Harry looked bemusedly at the photograph Colin was brandishing under his nose. A moving black and white Lockhart was tugging hard on an arm Harry recognized as his own. He was pleased to see that his photographic self was putting up a good fight and refusing to be dragged into view. As Harry watched, Lockhart gave up and slumped, panting, against the white edge of the picture. Will you sign it? Said Colin eagerly. No, said Harry flatly, glancing around to check what the room was No, said Harry flatly, glancing around the room. Yeah, really shouldn't read while I'm tired. No, said Harry flatly, glancing around to check that the room was really deserted. Sorry, Colin, I'm in a hurry. Quidditch practice. He climbed through the portrait hole. Oh wow, wait for me! I've never seen a Quidditch game before. Colin scrambled through the hole after him. It'll be really boring, Harry said I was about to say Henry. Harry said quickly, but Colin ignored him, his face lightening. Oh my god. Jeez. It'll be really boring, Harry said quickly, but Colin ignored him, his face shining with excitement. You were the youngest house player in 100 years, weren't you, Harry? Weren't you? Said Colin, trotting alongside him. You must be brilliant. I've never flown. Is it easy? Is that your own broom? Is that the best one there is? Harry didn't know how to get rid of him. It was like having an extremely talkative shadow. I don't really understand Quidditch, said Colin breathlessly. Is it true there are 4 balls and two of them fly around trying to knock people off their brooms? Yes, said Harry heavily, resigned to explaining the complicated rules of Quidditch. They're called bludgers. There are 2 beaters on each team who carry clubs to beat the bludgers away from their side. Fred and George Weasley are the Gryffindor beaters. Damn it. Fred and George Weasley are the Gryffindor beaters. And what are the other balls for? Colin asked, tripping down a couple of steps because he was gazing open-mouthed at Harry. Jesus hell, Creesh. Creesh? I'm even making up curse words now. Oh. Okay, maybe if I put the book closer to my face, I can't ignore the fact that it's not saying what I'm trying to think it says. Trying to think it says? Oh, dear God. Well, the quaffle, that's the biggest red one, is the one that scores goals. 3 chasers on each team throw the quaffle to each other and try to get it through the goalpost at the end of the pitch. There are 3 long poles with hoops on the end. And the 4th ball is the golden snitch, said Harry, and it's very small, very fast, and difficult to catch. But that's what the Seekers got to do, because a game of Quidditch doesn't end until the snitch has been caught, and whichever team Seeker gets the snitch earns his team an extra 150 points. There's no 1 in there. An extra 150 points. And you're Gryffindor Seeker, aren't you? There's no S there yet. And you're Gryffindor Seeker, aren't you? I thought that would be Gryffindor's Seeker, but it's just Gryffindor Seeker. And you're Gryffindor Seeker, aren't you? Said Colin in awe. Yes, said Harry, as they left the castle and started across the dew-drenched grass. Oh my god. Yes, said Harry, as they left the castle and started across the dew-drenched grass. Dew-drenched grass. Wow, I would have had trouble reading that even if I were fully awake. Yes, said Harry, as they left the castle and started across the dew-drenched grass. Dew-drenched grass. Dew-drenched grass. Yes, said Harry, as they left the castle and started across the dew-drenched grass. And I swallowed the D at the end there. Dew-drenched grass. Yes, said Harry, as they left the castle and started across the dew-drenched grass. And I slipped up there. Yes, said Harry, as they left the castle and started across the dew-drenched grass. Finally. And there's the keeper, too. He guards the goalposts. That's it, really. But Colin didn't stop questioning Harry all the way down to the sloping lawns to the Quidditch pitch. And Harry only shook him off when he reached the changing rooms. Colin called after him in a piping voice, "I'll go and get a good seat, Harry," and hurried off to the stands. The rest of the Gryffindor team were already in the changing room. Wood was the only person who looked truly awake. Fred and George Weasley were sitting, puffy-eyed and tussle-haired, next to fourth year Alicia Spinnet. Next to fourth year Alicia Spinnet, who seemed to be nodding off against the wall behind her. Her fellow chasers, Katie Bell and Angelina Johnson, were yawning side by side opposite them. "There you are, Harry. What kept you?" said Wood briskly. Now, I wanted a quick talk with you all before we actually get onto the pitch, because I spent the summer devising a whole new training program, which I really think will make all the difference. Wood was holding up a large diagram of a Quidditch pitch, on which were drawn many lines, arrows, and crosses in different colored inks. He took out his wand, tapped the board, and the arrows began to wiggle over the diagram like caterpillars. Like caterpillars. He took out his wand, tapped the board, and the arrows began to wiggle over the diagram like caterpillars. As Wood launched into a speech about his new tactics, Fred Weasley's head drooped right onto Alicia Spinnet's shoulder. As Wood launched into a speech about his new tactics, Fred Weasley's head drooped right onto Alicia Spinnet's shoulder, and he began to snore. There's nothing difficult about that sentence, and I'm having so much difficulty. As Wood launched into a speech about his new tactics, Fred Weasley's head drooped right onto Alicia Spinnet's shoulder, and he began to snore. Okay. That worked that time. I guess I really need to just read out loud the sentence first before I take another slowly before I take another stab at it. The first board took nearly 20 minutes to explain, but there was another board under that, and a third one under that one. Henry... Oh my god. Harry sank into a stupor as Wood droned on and on. "So," said Wood, at long last, jerking Harry from a wistful fantasy about what he could be... Jerking Harry from a wistful fantasy about what he could be eating for breakfast at this very moment up at the castle. "So," said Wood at long last, jerking Harry from a wistful fantasy about what he could be eating for breakfast at this very moment up at the castle. Is that clear? Any questions? Wow, reading it like that does help. "I've got a question, Oliver," said George, who had woken up with a start. "Why couldn't you have told us all this yesterday when we were awake?" Wood wasn't pleased. "Now listen here, you lot," he said, glowering at them all. "We should have won the Quidditch Cup last year. We're easily the best team. But unfortunately, owing to circumstances beyond our control..." Harry shifted guiltily in his seat. He had been unconscious in the hospital wing for the final match of the previous year, meaning that Gryffindor had been a player short and had suffered their worst defeat in 300 years. Wood took a moment to regain control of himself. Their last defeat was clearly still torturing him, rather than still clearly torturing him. It's clearly still torturing him. "So this year, we train harder than ever before. Okay, let's go and put our new theories into practice," Wood shouted, seizing his broomstick and leading the way out of the changing rooms. Stiff-legged and still yawning, his team followed. They had been in the changing room so long that the sun was now... Okay, let's do that trick again. They had been in the changing room so long that the sun was up properly now, although remnants of mist hung over the grass in the stadium. Okay. They had been in the changing room so long that the sun was up properly now, although remnants of mist hung over the grass in the stadium. Wow, that actually works. That's scary. As Harry walked onto the pitch, he saw Ron and Hermione standing in the... Am I saying that? Hermione. God, every time I come across that name, I'm going to think to myself, did I say that right? I'm probably not saying that right. As Harry walked onto the pitch, he saw Ron and Hermione sitting in the stands. As Harry walked onto the pitch, he saw Ron and Hermione sitting in the stands. As Harry walked onto the pitch, he saw Ron and Hermione sitting in the stands. "Aren't you finished yet?" he called Ron incredulously. "Aren't you finished yet?" said Ron incredulously. Called Ron incredulously. "Haven't even started," said Harry, looking jealously at the toast and marmalade Ron and Hermione had brought out of the Great Hall. "Wood's been teaching us new moves." He mounted his broomstick and kicked at the ground, soaring up into the air. The cool morning air whipped his face, waking up far more effectively than Wood's long talk. It felt wonderful to be back on the Quidditch pitch. He soared right around the stadium at full speed, racing Fred and George. "What's that funny clicking noise?" said Fred, as they hurtled around. "What's that funny clicking noise?" called Fred, as they hurtled around the corner. Harry looked into the stands. Colin was sitting in one of the highest seats, his camera raised, taking picture after picture, the sound strangely magnified in the deserted stadium. "Look this way, Harry! This way!" he cried shrilly. "Who's that?" said Fred. "No idea," Harry lied, putting on a spurt of speed that took him as far away as possible from Colin. "What's going on?" said Wood, frowning, as he skimmed through the air towards them. "Why is that first year taking pictures? I don't like it. He could be a Oh boy. I've never been able to say this word correctly. Slytherin. I mean, if I say it by itself, it's fine, but when it's in the middle of a sentence, it's like... Why is that first year taking pictures? I don't like it. He could be a Slytherin spy, trying to find out about our new training program. "He's in Gryffindor," said Harry quickly. "And the Slytherins don't need a spy, Oliver," said George. "What makes you say that?" said Wood testily. "Because they're here in person," said George, pointing. Several people in green robes were walking onto the pitch, broomsticks in their hands. "I don't believe this!" Wood hissed in outrage. Outrage. "I booked the pitch for today. We'll see about this." Wood shot towards the ground, landing rather harder than he meant to in his anger, staggering slightly as he dismounted. Harry, Fred, and George followed. "Flint!" Wood bellowed at the Slytherin captain. "This is our practice time. We got up specially. You can clear off now." Marcus Flint was even larger than Wood. He had the look of trollish cunning on his face as he replied, "Plenty of room for all of us, Wood." And I'm just going to keep doing that for all the Slytherins, because, fuck you, Slytherins. You're awful people. Actually, when I tried that test where you get sorted, I think I was actually sorted into Slytherin, so, damn, I'm screwed. Anyway, he had a look of trollish cunning. That's an interesting choice of words. Angelina, Alicia, and Katie had come over too. There were no girls on the Slytherin team. There were no girls on the Slytherin. See? Slytherin. There were no girls on the Slytherin team. There were no girls on the Slytherin. There were no girls on the Slytherin team who stood shoulder to shoulder, facing the Gryffindors, leering to a man. "But I booked the pitch," said Wood, positively spitting with rage. "I booked it." "Ah," said Flint, "but I've got a specially signed note here from Professor Snape. Oh, wait, I forgot to do the voice. Sorry, let's try it again. "Oh, but I've got a specially signed note here from Professor Snape. I, Professor S. Snape, give the Slytherin team permission to practice today on the Quidditch pitch, owing to the need to train their new seeker." "You've got a new seeker?" said Wood, distracted. "Where?" And from behind the 6 large figures before them came a 7th, smaller boy, smirking all over his pale, pointed face. It was Draco Malfoy. Yeah, that's a good place to stop. That's a good place to end. Yes. Yeah, and that was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Got better when I did the whole, sarcastically reading things as slow as possible and emphasizing every single word while I did that, and then reading through normally, which is not a tactic I would have assumed would work, but it did. It just cleared it out. Cleared all those cobwebs out. But as for other things like Hermione's name, Hermione, I don't know, and Slytherin. A word which I can say by itself, but once it's in the middle of a sentence, it just Yeah. Good thing I'm not the person doing the audiobooks for the Harry Potter series, because I would probably ruin it for many, many children, young adults, and people of all ages, really, because these books appeal to all ages. Anyway, as I said, this was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling, day 2 of the Harry Potter week that we have this week, and day 78 overall of my Narration challenge. Come back tomorrow where I will do another book from the series. Well, the 3rd book from the series. You can map out the course of what I'm doing for the rest of this week. Okay, see you guys then. Hey, you seem like a cool, wonderful, and/or awesome individual with impeccable taste in voice actors. So why not follow me on Facebook or Twitter? You can keep up with the latest projects I'm in, or that my friends are in, or that you could be in, because I occasionally post links to open editions to various projects that require voice acting out there, or that nobody's in, but they're interesting projects nonetheless that you may also find interesting. Also, lots of random thoughts about whatever's on my mind at that particular moment. Usually it's about food or video games, or foodie video games. Anyway, you can follow me on Facebook at OmadonVA or Twitter at Omadon. Hope to see you there.